Actually, I've discovered when I cut out my different videos for my sermons, when I upload them to YouTube, that the mask adjustment, tallit adjustment is the same as the clap for a Hollywood production. It's when I know where I'm supposed to cut it, because I see myself go flip, flip, adjust, and then I know, okay, I'm about to start talking. And now I've just ruined it, so I'm going to have to spend more time hearing myself on the recording, which is never a joyful thing. I just hate hearing yourself on a recording. And I think that may be exacerbated because despite perhaps the appearance of me standing here on the front of the bima, I'm actually a shy person by nature. And a lot of people sort of, a little painful in their shyness. They don't like it. But I have found over my life that being shy has come with certain perks, certain advantages. There are definitely some advantages of not always stepping out in front of everyone else when what everyone else is doing turns out to be a bus, and you would get yourself flattened. And one of the places I have decided that over the course of my life I have been especially fortunate and well served by my shyness and reticence has been dating. Not that I've done that for a while, don't get me wrong, but even before I was married, I didn't do a whole lot of active dating. I hung out with people of all genders, and we socialized an awful lot. A lot of very good memories as a young person with my friends. But taking the step of asking a person out, I was very hesitant for because of my shyness, of course. But as I saw friends, again, both men and women, enter into relationships that came with problems that were more than what you would hope from just a regular relationship of young people navigating what it is to be people together, I began to consider myself luckier and luckier. I am fortunate that of the people that I might have been interested in or who might have been interested in me, that I took long enough to get to know them that I never actually stepped on the landmine of entering into an abusive relationship. Unfortunately, I have friends who did spend months or sometimes years in relationships that were extremely abusive. Relationships where the person might be extremely possessive of them, very jealous of them. Why are you spending so much time with that Josh guy? What are you doing over there? Is there something going on? What do you mean? Why are you always talking to them? It's like, because they're a friend that I've known for 5 years. What is the issue here? But in many abusive relationships, that possessiveness, that jealousy, is a way of isolating the person, a way of cutting them off from the rest of their friends and family and social support structure so that they are dependent wholly on their abuser. Indeed, that is why many relationships that are abusive have a lot of controlling rules. Well, just make sure you call in every hour. Just make sure you're home by 10. Just make sure that you do X, you do Y, or don't do X and Y, even when those might be perfectly normal activities that the person would do. But again, by exerting this control, they are imprisoning the person that is the victim of their abuse within this relationship. And of course, if they get out of line, well, then thankfully, none of my friends experienced physical abuse, but the verbal and emotional abuse can be almost as terrible, and sometimes harder for the person to admit and to seek some form of escape from. We all recognize the bruises that appear from a person who has been punched, but we don't always recognize the severity of a person who has been belittled or humiliated or needlessly embarrassed or otherwise attacked by somebody that is supposed to be their partner, their friend, their confidant. And yet, too many people are trapped in these types of relationships. And I want to ask you, are we, as a nation, trapped in a relationship with an abuser? God. Does God fit the model of an abusive spouse? We often couch our relationship with God in the terms of marriage. We are married to God, and it is a monogamous relationship, at least on our part, not so much on God, since God is the God of the entire universe. God is allowed to see other people. We are not allowed to see other gods. God self-describes himself as a passionate and jealous God. God has told us we will have no other gods. We're not allowed to go hang out with them anymore. And in fact, Tisha B'Av is very much about us still hanging out with all of our old friends, the various idols that we worship. And God doesn't seem happy about that. And talk about controlling. Have you seen the commandments that we are expected to follow? God seems to have a rule for everything we're supposed to do from the moment we get up till the moment we go to sleep. And we are constantly calling in to God, all of our tefillot, all of our prayers. Yes, God, it is morning. Yes, I'm here. Yes, God, I'm about to eat this. I just want you to know. Yes, God, it's afternoon. I'm calling again. Yes, it's time for the evening prayers. That's right. I'm going to go to bed now. No, there's no one else with me. I'm not worshiping any other idols. It's just you. Good night, God. It's a little much, isn't it? God is a little possessive and needy and obsessive about us. And when we get out of line, well, what are we commemorating tomorrow with Tisha B'Av? God kicks down the house twice? God wipes us out during our rebellion against the Romans? Disaster after disaster after disaster every time we're out of line? And hopefully you were paying attention during the Haftarah, not saying very nice things about us. God publicly declares that we're pretty horrible people and that we have done some horrible things. This sounds like a pattern of abuse, and we keep coming back for more. How do we make sense of this? Indeed, there are many people who are part of various militant atheist groups that point to things like this and will describe quite descriptively, even with more passion than I, because they actually believe it rather than using it as a rhetorical device like me. They actually describe this as an abusive relationship and that nobody should stick with God because of all the horrible treatment that we have had. I'd like to have you first recognize this pattern, because like I said, it is out there within the conversational sphere of the world, the people who talk about religion. But I want you to look at it in a very different way. We are the abuser, not God. Now, I know that is the common refrain of people who are in abusive relationships. He wouldn't have to hit me if I didn't do something wrong. She wouldn't do that if I had been more attentive, if I had been more appreciative. Yes, and that is a significant problem in human relations. But there are types of relationships where one person is the abuser of the other, not in the sense that they are abusing the other, but that they are abusing themselves, and the other is there trying to help them, desperately to hold them back from the self-destructive path that they are on. Imagine a loving couple where there is no abuse between them, but one of them begins to have difficulty with substance abuse. Alcohol, opioids, there are so many options to choose from. Pick one that you may be familiar with. The other spouse then has an option. As they see their spouse beginning to go down this path of self-destruction, of abuse, they can leave. They can say, you know what? You are hitting the bottle a little too much. You are popping a few too many pills. It's beginning to take a toll, and I don't like where this is going. So there's the door. It's been nice having this time together, but I can't walk down that path with you. And in some situations, that is the right call to make, depending upon the relationship and depending upon the nature and intensity of the abuse. But more often, if the relationship is strong enough at the beginning of this cycle of abuse, the loving spouse will say, hey, no, we need to stop this. We need to work together to fix this problem. I'm going to stand alongside of you, and I'm going to help you as best as I can to overcome this addiction and to fight back against the temptations. So here's what we're going to do. All right, we're going to come up with a game plan together, you and I, to help beat this. So we're going to get rid of all the bottles in the house, all right? Now, I know you're not going to like that, but it's just going to make the house a safe place where you don't have to worry about the temptation. We're just going to put it all in the trash. All of it goes out to the curb. We're done. All right? Good. Now, yeah, I know you're going to get grumpy about this, but this is the first step. All right? That doesn't work. Well, tell you what, you need to go to a 12-step program, a therapist, a counselor. You need to go to another group. You have to put some effort into trying to work through the causes and your emotions about this so that we can overcome this. And I'll drive you there, and I'll pick you up. Little obsessive, right? And afterwards, we're not going to go stop by a bar. We're not going to go to a restaurant that serves alcohol because we're not going to have those temptations. There are going to be limits on what we do in order to help get past this. Is this an abusive spouse? Or is this a spouse who is dedicating themselves to trying to build a structure with their partner that will enable them to return to the person they were before the addiction began to take over, giving them the strength? And if it gets so bad that eventually the person has to go off to rehab, that they need to go to a detox clinic or some other organization to help them, and that means they are, in quote, being kicked out of the house in order that in that other experience setting venue they can have an intense experience to try and finally remove that addiction from their life as the centerpiece of their current existence. Is that abuse? No. Now, all of this is predicated and built around the very subtle distinction between why is the partner taking the actions they're taking. In an abusive relationship, the possessiveness, the control, the intervention in the other person's freedom and expression, all of that is designed to belittle and shrink them down so that they can be captive to the abuser. In a loving relationship where there are flaws, where there are problems, especially in this example and within our national example, on one side, the loving partner is trying to structure life in such a way to enable the person who is going through the difficulties to flourish and to leave behind the pain and suffering that they are causing themselves and all too often those around them. And they are slaving away on behalf of the person so that they can be bigger and better than they currently are, no longer trapped within the prison of their own self-destruction, so that they can grow and be free. It's hard sometimes to recognize the difficult kick in the tuchus that is necessary for people to change. Sometimes we do have to have an intervention, to use the modern lingo, to talk to people frankly and openly about the problem that they are experiencing and which is beginning to hurt their life and the lives of those around them. The words of the prophets that we have been reading for the last 3 weeks, and indeed the vast majority of the prophetic literature in its entirety, is God grabbing us by the lapels and saying, don't do this to yourself. Don't. You're walking down a road which is going to kill you. Stop. Because I love you. Stop. For 400 years, God tried, stuck with us, was patient, did everything you could possibly imagine to try and bring us back and prevent us from sliding further. And we got worse and worse until we went off to rehab in Babylon. And Tisha B'Av commemorates that moment of clarity, to use the nomenclature. Tisha B'Av commemorates that moment where in the ruins of the first temple, with Jerusalem in our rearview mirror with the smoke rising above us, we recognized what God had been trying to tell us all along. That God was not being pushy. God was not being overly demanding. God was somebody on the shore screaming at us that there was a shark coming up behind us and trying to signal us to come to safety. And we had ignored it. More than ignored it, we had rebelled against it. We had swum towards the shark, as if out of spite that God would dare try to intervene in our lives and limit our ability to murder, to cheat, to oppress, that somehow this was the prison that we were trying to escape from. In Babylon, we recognized the truth. In Babylon, we reformed ourselves and came back, still with mistakes and flaws, but more dedicated to God and to the idea that righteousness was not a prison, but was freedom. That living a life of goodness and quality was not weakness, but was the greatest strength we could have. And to truly, fully be ourselves didn't mean doing whatever we want no matter the consequences, but it meant avoiding the consequences thanks to the wisdom that God had shared and our tradition had given us, so that we would not be burdened by the shackles of all of the illusions and self-destructive behaviors that humans are prone to. That would truly allow us, to be free. Not a slave to God, but truly liberated from God, liberated by God. We still struggle with this. We still are not sure what our relationship should be with God. And many people now more than ever are saying, you know what? I'm not sure whether religion serves a purpose anymore. I'm not sure whether commandments are useful anymore. Everybody knows what's the right thing to do. Everybody knows how to live a good life. What's the point of coming and listening to some guy stand on the front of the bima haranguing me, telling me that I need to try harder, telling me that there's more to learn, telling me that there are new aspects of being a better person than I've currently explored. If you're not listening, then you are allowing the door to be closed on yourself. If you are not growing, then you are shrinking into a prison of your own making. If you don't weep at Tisha B'Av and recognize the great pain that could have been so easily avoided, then we are potentially going to repeat it again on an individual or national scope. Tisha B'Av is there not to make us feel bad, but it is there to recognize what was bad so we will have hope and strength to do good. Shabbat Shalom.